What if I told you that in order to communicate confidence with women, you first need to be confident with yourself? Now, this seems like a pretty obvious thing, but quite frankly, I still don't see enough people truly talking about the most important things to communication, right? You must understand that speech was only developed to try to communicate the things that we needed to communicate, but at the same time, there are certain things that cannot be communicated and that aren't communicated through speech. So I'm here to talk about a little bit more about what that looks like in regards to women specifically, because it is definitely very, very important to make sure that you have the right communication skills and are presenting the right openness for the communication that is going to allow for women to see and to feel your confidence. I think that those are all very, very important things, and that is what I will be discussing today. If you do not know who I am, my name is Champ, and I help men build their foundation of masculinity. On today's episode, how to communicate confidence with women, I'm going to be discussing just that and a little bit more as well. I'll be discussing my own experience as well as the experiences that I've heard from other people as well as just try to give you as much information as I possibly can about this topic. So that is what I'll be discussing today. A few things I want to say before I go to get it started. Make sure you go to follow me on Twitch, TikTok, Rumble, and on Spotify at Life of Champ Podcast on every single platform. Go live on Thursdays, go live also on Mondays as well if you want to see a little bit more um, just random content, I'd say. But getting into it, you must understand, and I'm gonna start off with the same foundation that I did on the last podcast. If you did not watch that, I would highly recommend it. I wanna mention and I want to emphasize and re-emphasize the fact that speech is only a small part of how we've communicated, right? Just in general, right? And the example that I would like to use is if somebody's lying to you and they're saying all the right things, you can just sense and feel that there's something off about this person. For whatever reason, there's something just off. And I feel like that's something that you should pay way more attention to. So some would call it their gut feeling, some would call it their intuition, some would call it a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, essentially we communicate non-verbally most of the time. And I'm sure you've heard that. But to truly understand what that means is something that is much greater and it's something that takes a lot more comprehending than what anyone's really willing to admit. So our body language, our facial expressions, and our hand gestures say a lot more about what we're up to than what we say that we're up to. And these things, quite frankly, do not lie, and you must take that as such. So when it comes to communicating confidence with women, she's going to tell if you're confident or not, if you can handle yourself or not, if you're nervous or not. She can tell all these things. You don't need to even say that you are those ways because she can feel that you are exactly those ways. So the thing that I want to mention that also is going to seal this is I want you to think back to the caveman days, right? Well, these hypothetical caveman days. I don't know if they exist. I don't know if they don't exist. I don't know if they do exist or they don't exist, but it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Let's just go back to the frame of mind that is the caveman days, right? There was no language, there was no structured language that we communicated with. So the question is, how did we communicate? And that is the nonverbal part that goes without saying. You can sense certain things about a certain character, the ways in which they move, how they're feeling potentially. And these are things that suggest feeling and action a lot more than, like I said, what somebody's saying, right? So, with that being said, that is something that you should focus in on more because, quite frankly, you can still communicate a lot without saying anything at all, right? So, the question I have for you is this: when it comes to communicating confidence with women, are you communicating the right nonverbal signals? And what that's going to look like is many different things, but essentially, there's going to be nonverbal signals that are going to communicate the ways in which you feel about yourself, the ways in which you feel about the scenario, the ways in which you feel about the other individual that's in the room with you. So, are you communicating effectively in the ways in which aren't really even communication or what you would typically conventionally think of as communication? So, the nonverbal signals, maybe it's openness of body language, that's a very, very big one. Maybe it's eye contact, that's another big one as well. Maybe it's yeah, I would just say like maybe are you speaking with your palms facing somebody, or are you just more like, your arms are more crossed, your legs are crossed? But at the end of the day, these things are all going to play a part in how you communicate. And I think that's super, super important. And I'll give you another example. And this is why it's definitely very, very important, right? So let's just say that you're a guy who has social anxiety. Maybe you haven't talked or haven't had that many experiences with women, and you want to know exactly what to say. Maybe that's, and I see this as a fascination for a lot of people for whatever reason. Is it like, what do I say when I go up to her? What do I say? How do I? And at the end of the day, it's just like this. It really doesn't matter what you say. It just matters how you say it, and that's what it is at the end of the day. So, what I mean by that is, there are guys that get away with saying, I'm gonna say, less interesting things, and that they aren't exactly as calculated as you think that they would be, and they can still thrive with women. And then there's other guys that know exactly what to say, but they don't exactly know how to communicate it properly non-verbally, and they'll still fumble. You see what I'm saying? So that's something that I think is very, very important, right? If you're a shy guy and you say, "Champ, I need to know what is the best thing that I could say to a woman when it comes to approaching her." I could give you exactly what I would say. I could give you exactly what could be the most perfect pickup line ever, right? But at the end of the day, if you're not able to communicate non-verbally properly in a way that would also match what you have to say, then it's really not going to matter at all, right? And that, like I said, in the inverse, right? If you're a guy that's, who has confidence and who's developed himself and who's, let's just say, more socially competent, it really doesn't matter what you say, because quite frankly, she's going to feel your vibe. If she likes it, then she likes it. And if she doesn't like it, then she doesn't like it at the end of the day. But yeah, I think that's super, super important. And my last podcast, if you're interested in any of the things that I've talked about so far, definitely highly recommend tapping with the last podcast, because I talked about some of the more intricate details about nonverbal communication. So I'll leave that for that. So when communicating confidence with women, it is very, very important to understand that in order to truly communicate confidence, you need to make the woman comfortable. And I think this is something that really goes understated. I feel like when you're more confident yourself, right? When you communicate that confidence can kind of um, almost familiarize yourself with the woman. So if that makes any sense. So let's just say the more likely you are to be confident, the more confident she's going to be, right? I feel like women, they lead. That's funny. I feel like women, they follow without knowing that they're following. So if you're more socially anxious, odds is she's gonna feel that, and she's gonna be more anxious, right? It's very, very rare where a woman's going to be super, super confident and she's on a date with a guy that's really not confident, who's really not built for that moment. Does it make sense? So I think it is very, very important for you to, when you're communicating confidence, or let's just say trying to build up that comfortability, that you need to be communicating those nonverbal signals that are going to be very, very key in order to maintain that woman's comfortability. So the question you must be asking is how to make a woman comfortable, right? So there's many different studies that were on this, and if you really, really want me to get down to it, I could definitely send you some if you would like. But at the end of the day, when I thought about it myself, what it comes down to it is this. You need to be able to be somewhat reliable and predictable in their own head, right? The more predictable and the more reliable you are, the odds is she's going to be more comfortable. And I've had plenty of situations where I was able to make the woman, let's just say, comfortable in a very, very short amount of time. And I think this is one of the skills that I had, and I would say any man that I've ever met, I can kind of just tell by his energy that he's this specific way. And I have a good friend who who's definitely very, very socially competent, and I could just tell he's also that same specific way, um, with women, where they just automatically feel comfortable in their presence. And I've tried to really, really think and try to hone in on the things that I think are the contributing factors to what really contributes to somebody's energy, to somebody's, I don't know. Yeah, I'm just gonna say energy. There's probably better words for this, but essentially communicating when you're communicating non-verbally, There are certain things that you're gonna do that's gonna work very, very well, and there's certain things that other men do that obviously aren't gonna work very, very well. I'm gonna read this comment, and then I'll get back to it. Men create the energy and the interaction. Women feed off and give back the energy that was created. I 100% agree with that, Jaden. Appreciate you for stopping by. So yes, you need to be somewhat reliable and somewhat predictable, and you need to be viewed as not a threat. I feel like that's something that a lot of men don't necessarily know how to fully communicate, right? Not that you're intentionally trying to be threatening, but you are a man and she is a woman, right? At the end of the day, you're bigger and stronger than her, and you're more probably physically competent than her. I would say, I would hope so. And with that being said, this is why it is of the utmost importance to make sure that she's comfortable within your presence, because if she's not, then she's the more vulnerable sex, so therefore she's more vulnerable. So it is paramount. It is of paramount importance for you to make sure that she's comfortable. And I would say a lot of it has to do with, I think, asking the right questions to try to get to know someone. And I feel like there's always this advantage that you can have within an interaction where if you're able to try to get to know that person a little bit more than they know you, then there's a mystery there because they want to get to know you a little bit more because you're leaving out some, maybe I'm not even saying leaving out some of the detail, but you're just not you're not adding the most that you possibly can, right? So I think that's very, very important in order to make a woman comfortable. And if you're able to ask in a friendly way that doesn't necessarily feel like an interview, I feel like when a woman starts to open up, and maybe you could start off with a few different questions. And I never really structured it a specific way, but I would say obviously the more comfortable she is, the more she's going to give out. And it is up to you to be able to recognize exactly how she's feeling and when she's feeling what she's feeling, right? And that just I can't necessarily even help you with that. And this is my attempt at trying to communicate things that are nonverbal, right? Like I said. So when it comes to the woman that is, let's just say a woman's in front of you, right? You need to be able to understand that initially probably she's not going to feel the most comfortable. What is one thing that you can do that is going to make them very, very comfortable, right? And I would say there's it depends on how you set it up, but essentially what I always like to do is I like to anytime that I was dating a girl, I immediately once I understood that there was attraction on both sides, I automatically already came in with the frame that she was attracted to me. She's already somewhat comfortable with me because she's attracted to me, so she definitely wants to be more comfortable. So I treated every single girl as if they were mine automatically off the rip. I feel like there's too many guys that go into these dating interactions and there's just so much of a distance that they have to make up. And I feel like for at least I can speak from my own personal experiences is I didn't necessarily have to make up some of the things that other men have to make up. For whatever reason, that's just what it is. And through my observations, it's simply because I just treated them differently off the rip. There was already a sense of familiarity there, and that can even start off as simple as one of the first interactions. Right? You meet her. What do you do? Do you just what is the intro? Do you hug her? Do you not hug her? I feel like a lot of men they overthink this, and then and they just don't do anything at all. Right? Or they're just hi, nice to meet you. This and this and this. But I think a hug is probably going to be the best bet when it comes to introducing yourself, right? Also, the way that they go about it when it comes to breaking the touch barrier, a lot of different things. I can get into a lot of different things, but essentially, you need to be able to gauge how she's feeling and when she's feeling what she's feeling, right? So, if you can tell she's a little bit standoffish, it's probably not going to be within your best interest to try to act as if she's yours because quite frankly, that might not work out, right? So, I feel like you're able to gauge this within the first one or two interactions that you'll have with the woman. How you get her number or how you get to know her is going to be different in every it's going to be different in every single situation. But quite frankly, if you're able to communicate enough, which is almost really not enough in the first interaction, all the following interactions are going to be a lot easier, right? So yeah, I would say do your best to try to make her feel comfortable. I know I probably haven't done the greatest job at describing how to make a woman feel comfortable, but I would say you just need to have some type of familiarity. You need to understand when to back off and when it's okay for you to go ahead and press on, if that makes any sense. So if you ask her a question and you can sense that it's a sensitive topic, then it's probably within your best interest to not really push forward with that because, quite frankly, there's maybe a touchy subject there. And then maybe you can end it off by saying, whenever you feel comfortable, I would love to have the discussion with you if that's something that you would like to do. But I feel like there's a lot of men, they kind of ignore these certain things. They're just so attached to the outcome that they want that they will force their way to try to get that in the most negative sense and then end up not getting anything at all. So it's very, very key for for you to gauge the interaction initially for what it is, and to be very, very clear of the course of action in order to build up the comfortability, because it is going to be step by step by step. I'm not saying it is as simple as that. And I'm not even saying that you should think of it as that, but quite frankly, it should almost be an unconscious thought when it comes to dealing with women. That yeah, essentially, she's gonna start at one spot. If she's already very, very comfortable with you initially, then it's gonna be a lot easier to really do almost anything that you would like to do. Right? That's just what it is. Everybody really knows that. But like I said, for the men that are really, really struggling with, really communicating the right nonverbal signals, it's very, very key for you to be very, very conscious of this. And I don't want you to also be so much in your head that you're not enough in the present moment. But quite frankly, all I'm saying with these things is I want you to be consciously unconscious, right? If that makes any sense. So I want you to be conscious and acknowledge the things that I have said, but I want you to go ahead and act them out unconsciously in the world, because that is the highest form of learning, is being able to learn, or uh, yeah, essentially learn, to be able to learn and then to be able to act out in the world without really needing to think back to this specific situation that led you to the learning of the process, right? So how to make a woman feel comfortable? You gotta first gauge where she's at. You gotta be a confident individual within yourself, right? Whatever that looks like, and I understand that there's a lot of nuance to this, but at the same time, what does confidence look like to you? If you're not the most confident person, it's probably not going to go good. You're probably not going to do good with women. That's just what it is. I'm not saying that you need to be the most confident person of all time, but at the same time, if you're not confident at all, you should be doing whatever it takes in order to build your confidence, right? And once you build up your confidence, then these situations are going to be a lot easier. But a woman's definitely going to feel very, very comfortable in the presence of somebody who is confident, because at least they're sure of themselves, and that can convey many different things. That can convey structure, that can convey competence, that can convey a lot of different things, and those are all things that women like. So that is going to make a woman feel a lot more comfortable with you. And I'm trying to I've had a few situations that I've dealt with women where they were a little less than comfortable initially, and it really, really threw me off because, quite frankly, I dealt, at least I'm speaking on one of the occasions that I did have with the woman, which that entire situation was weird. But essentially, it really threw me off because, quite frankly, I'd already dealt with over 10 to I'd already dealt with like about 10 women where the interactions went way differently than that one interaction. But quite frankly, it was weird because I was doing everything that was almost the same. I was acting the same ways, but she wasn't necessarily, she wasn't feeling the most comfortable that she possibly could have felt. And that's something that you must understand and learn and know when to back off and when a certain situation is appropriate and when it's not. So I feel like also to not it's very, very hard to not get discouraged when you, let's just say you have an opportunity to advance and that advance is rejected, right? So that could be literally anything. Let's just say you touch her leg, she pushes your hand off. Or let's just say you go in for the kiss and she says no. Let's just say you go in to try to sleep with her and it just yeah, and she rejects you, right? It's very, very, of course it's going to lower your confidence in order to go ahead and retry it again. But at the end of the day, if that's what you want, you must re-engage at a more appropriate time. So that's what I will say. So, and with that specific situation that I was speaking on, it was definitely very, very relevant and prevalent within the situation that whenever I recognized that she was more comfortable, then obviously she was going to be a lot more receptive to the things that I had proposed. So let's just say that was touching her leg. Like I said, trying to break the touch barrier. This is something that is obvious when it comes to importance of trying to build up a woman's comfortability. Is how physically comfortable is she with you touching her, right? I think that's pretty obvious, right? And I feel like, and I kind of want to mention this because I think this is also an interesting thing, right? I've had a conversation, and this is going to get a little controversial, but I like to have this conversation because I think it's interesting, right? So I've had this conversation with a woman before, who she was talking about consent, right? And this is going to go back to the nonverbal communication, the nonverbal signaling that I mentioned earlier, right? She was like, "Oh, I only talk to guys that give that 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 ask for my consent in order to have any sexual interactions or whatever." And I thought that was interesting because I was like, most guys that I know, and me myself, I don't necessarily even need to ask, but it's not like it wasn't already answered, if that makes any sense, right? And you can tell non-verbally whether a woman is comfortable with you in order to have that type of interaction, or whether she's not. Or if she's clearly not, you're going to be able to tell. And if she clearly is, you're going to be able to tell, right? So that's something that I think is interesting that I've heard a woman talk about. I'm like, you have no idea what you're doing. You have no idea what you're talking about. Most guys are not going to ask because, quite frankly, your actions are going to be the answer, right? That he would be asking, right? So I think that's interesting for sure. So yes, you need deep understanding and you need deep observation, right? Deep understanding with the woman, right? You need to be able to build a deep understanding of your own confidence, right? How you would like to communicate your nonverbal signaling. And you need to have deep observation to be able to analyze all the intricacies that do exist with each and every woman that you deal with, right? Whether they're comfortable right now, whether they're not comfortable right now, right? Oh, maybe she needs this instead of she needs this, right? Or maybe she would respond better to something like this as opposed to this for the current moment that does exist. So, um, yeah, you must ask yourself the question, and maybe try to picture what this looks like in your head. What does it look like when she isn't feeling the vibe, right? What does it look like when she isn't feeling the vibe? How is she going to what is her body language going to be? What is she going to say? She's going to be a lot more suppressive with the things that she wants to talk about. Maybe she's going to be facing away from you. Maybe she's going to be um, have her arms crossed or have her arm on her stomach, right? That's a sign of somebody not feeling as comfortable, feeling they need to protect themselves by placing bones where there isn't bones, right? That's something that I had learned about that I thought was interesting. But at the same time, one thing that I will say, and I'll leave you guys up with this, right? This is just one of the few things that I learned that I thought was interesting. It's something that I've observed, but didn't necessarily know about specifically. And this is something that I think I mentioned on the last podcast, but I'm going to mention it again that I think is interesting. So I don't want you to be hyperly observant of this, but quite frankly, this could be all telling whether a woman is comfortable with you or whether she's not comfortable with you. This is going to be blink rate, right? The gaze of a woman will gauge how interested or how uninterested she is in the current moment. So if she's staring at you, kinda, or if she's looking at you, if she's not blinking very very much, that means she's being very very aware and she wants to be fully present and in the moment with you, right? If she's blinking a little bit more, maybe she's a little bit more anxious, maybe she's a little less comfortable, and that's something that you need to be paying attention for because it is definitely very very important. So yes, okay. I hope that you understand when somebody looks at you, what it looks like when they feel familiar and comfortable with you. I hope you know what that looks like, right? Just try to see if she's also reciprocating those same type of signaling, right? If she's familiar and if she's comfortable with you, right? If she's not, if she's giving you a look that you're unfamiliar with, it's probably not going to be a good look. She's probably not comfortable. So I think you need to be very very aware of that. And unfortunately, there's a lot of men that are creepy. That won't take what I have to say, or they won't act on the things that I say specifically. But at the same time, that is up to you. All I'm trying to do is give you the game of what I know. So that's what it is, man. So how do you get a woman or rather, how do you communicate confidence to women? You communicate confidence to women by being a man that is worthy of her presence, right? And if you don't feel necessarily worthy of her presence, then obviously you got some work to do. But at the same time, communicating confidence to women is going to extend a lot more beyond what you will say, right? So, like I had mentioned, right, make sure you have the nonverbal signaling. And here's the thing: at the end of the day, you can say all the right things, but it's not going to matter unless you truly feel that way, right? So if let's just say you want to convey confidence, but you're not that confident of a person, there's shit that you have to handle. And here's the thing: even if you convey a version of confidence, she's going to be able to tell. She's going to be able to tell that there's something still off about you, right? Maybe you're a little bit more unsure of yourself, and she'll be able to feel that. Like I said, it's just what it is. It's literally human nature for us to communicate non-verbally. So um, be very very cognizant of that because I think it's very very important, right? I'm gonna ask you the question at the end of the day that I think is very very important, right? The question that I asked earlier: are you communicating the right nonverbal signals? And if you aren't, you have some adjustments that need to be made, right? And these aren't things that are going to be easily fixable, right? Or easily, let's just say, it's too easy to get feedback, right? This is going to be a feeling. Maybe you need to be put in the environment a little bit more in order to act a certain way. Maybe you need to learn a little bit more about humans in general, right? This is something that I'm trying to teach, right? A little bit more about the ways in which humans communicate, right? I find that absolutely fascinating. So maybe that's what you need to learn a little bit more about, or maybe you need to learn a little bit more about yourself, right? If you're able to do all those things, I think you're going to be way better at being able to communicate confidence with women. I think you're going to be very, very capable when it comes to being observant to the point where you're going to be able to recognize whether a woman is feeling comfortable with you or whether she's truly not. And I think those are going to be one of the most important things for sure. So that's just what it is, right? So, yes, understand that there's going to be a lot of nuance in what I have to say. Understand thoroughly that I don't want you to necessarily be hyperly observant of certain things. I think you need to be understanding of them and then apply that understanding unconsciously in the interaction, right? So I think that's going to give you your best bet. Besides that, is there anything else that I have to say? It's not about who you say you are, it's about who you are. And that's going to be communicated non-verbally. Whether you would like to admit it or not, it's going to be communicated non-verbally. So your best bet, get better with yourself, get better with women, get better with everything, get better with your confidence. And at the end of the day, if you're lacking confidence, you should be doing everything and anything in your power that's going to help you convey that confidence and to be a more confident person. And at the end of the day, like GDP said, vibes are everything. That's for damn sure. This is episode 227 of the Life of Champ podcast, talking about how to communicate confidence to women. That's all I have to say. Tap in with the next podcast on Thursday. Tap in with the live stream that I'm going to be doing Monday as well. If there's a specific video that you want me to go ahead and react to, or if there's a specific tier list that you want me to go ahead and create, feel free to let me know, and I will definitely be responding in the comments for sure. Next podcast is going to be everything that I've personally learned when it comes to communication and more importantly, nonverbal communication. That was outside of what I've already mentioned on the last podcast as well as this one. So tap in with that one for sure next Thursday. Other than that, I'll leave you guys off with the podcast motto. Fellas out here, man, we don't just work around here, man. We outwork. So make sure you outwork with these motherfuckers because you know that I am and you know that everyone else around me is. You already know what time it is, man. So get better with women, get better with yourself, build up some comfortability, right? Learn about your nonverbal signaling like I had mentioned because that tells everything that you can tell. And that's what it is. Y'all have a good night. And like I said, tap with the next podcast on Thursday.